4 terrifying true stories with real photos that'll haunt you. Part 1. The girl in the Polaroid. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. But some photos, they speak in silence. Words no one should ever hear. You've likely seen eerie images online. Grainy photos of unknown figures standing in the background, unexplained shadows, or unsettling smiles in family portraits. But this story, it's not about what's in the picture. It's about what comes after. This is a true story. And yes, there's a photo. But I must warn you, once you've seen her face, she sees you too. I found the photo in a box labeled 1979, Lake Huron, buried deep in my grandfather's attic after his passing. I was helping my parents clean out the old house when I opened the creaky trunk filled with yellowed papers, military badges, and water-damaged journals. Among the mess was a plain, white envelope. It had no label, no handwriting, just sealed tight with brittle glue. Inside was a single Polaroid. The image was unsettling in that vague, subconscious way. It showed a dock, some mist over the water, and a girl standing near the edge. She wore a white summer dress, almost translucent in the fog, and her black hair was hanging limp over her shoulders. Her feet were bare, and though her face was angled downward, you could tell she was staring at the camera. Not through it. At it. At me. The instant I touched the photo, a chill ran up my spine. I dismissed it as attic air and dust, but it lingered. My fingers went numb. I tucked the photo into my jacket pocket and didn't think much more of it at first. That night, back in my apartment, I placed the Polaroid on my desk. The lamp beside it flickered. I replaced the bulb. It flickered again. I took a picture of the photo using my phone. Zoomed in. And that's when I saw it. There was something in the mist behind her. Not a boat. Not a tree. A shape tall and angular, like a man hunched backward. It wasn't in the original Polaroid, only visible when I digitally enhanced it. I laughed it off. Artifacts. Low resolution. My mind playing tricks. Until I started dreaming about her. The dreams were always the same. I stood at the end of that same dock. The fog was thick, wet like soup. I couldn't move. She stood just 10 feet away, unmoving, her head slowly lifting. Never enough to see her eyes. Always just a shadow where her face should be. Each time, I woke up drenched in sweat. But worse than the nightmares were the sounds that began after night 3. Tapping. At the window. I live on the 3rd floor. On the 4th night, the tapping became knocking. 3 sharp, slow raps on the glass. I refused to look. Buried myself under the covers like a terrified child. The knocking stopped. I waited 5 minutes, then dared to peek. There were handprints on the outside of the glass. Small ones. Child-sized. Wet. As if from lake water. I told myself I needed sleep. My job as a freelance photo editor had me glued to screens 12 hours a day. I was probably projecting. Hallucinating. But the Polaroid, I couldn't throw it away. I don't know why. It felt wrong to destroy it, like something terrible would happen. Instead, I searched for answers. I scanned the Polaroid, ran it through databases, and even posted it on a niche forum for paranormal investigators. Days passed, and then I got a message from a user named Maudlin Mist. It read, "I've seen her too. Burn it. Now." I clicked on their profile, nothing. No activity. No other posts. The account vanished within an hour. Still, their words haunted me. I didn't burn the photo. Instead, I went back to the attic and dug deeper. I found a journal. My grandfather's. Near the end, there was an entry dated June 28, 1979. Something wrong at the lake. Little girl missing from nearby town. Locals say she walked into the fog. No body. Just her shoes found on the dock. Strange thing, Earl took a photo that day. Showed us at dinner. Girl was in it. None of us saw her when it was taken. Told Earl to destroy it. He wouldn't. 2 days later, he drowned in his bathtub. Said he kept dreaming of her. I felt sick. The dates matched. The handwriting was frantic. That girl, whoever she was, had appeared in multiple photos taken on different cameras by different people. I searched for missing person records. Found one match. Lena Caraway, aged 8, Last seen June 25th, 1979, near Rockmill Lake, about 20 miles from the old family cabin. That's when I realized my grandfather never told us he had a cabin. The next weekend, I drove out there. It was abandoned, half swallowed by vines and rot. The air reeked of mildew and stagnant water. Inside, mold climbed the walls and old furniture collapsed under its own weight. But the dock was still there. I stood at its edge and held the Polaroid up for comparison. Mist began to roll across the lake. Slowly, like it was aware I was there. And then, I heard it. A splash. I froze. Something or someone was in the water. My phone buzzed. A notification. Image saved. Live photo. I hadn't taken any pictures. I opened the gallery. Somehow, the camera had captured a photo on its own. A live photo. In it, the Polaroid sat in my hand, the lake behind me, and in the split second of motion just before it ended, her head turned toward me in the Polaroid. And smiled. I left the cabin. Drove back in silence. Didn't sleep that night or the next. The Polaroid, it won't burn. I tried. Twice. I soaked it in lighter fluid. Set it on fire. It blackened. Crumbled. I swept the ashes into a bag and threw them in the trash. Next morning, it was back on my desk. Perfectly intact. I don't know what she wants. But she's watching. And if you're wondering, yes. I uploaded the photo. It's in the video. Right now. If you've seen her, even just for a second, she's already on her way. Part 2. The Man in the Negative. They say you shouldn't look too closely at old photographs. Not because of what's in them, but because of what looks back. This is another true story. And yes, there is a photo. But unlike the girl in the Polaroid, this image wasn't found. It was developed. Accidentally. And when the man saw what he'd captured, he wished he'd never picked up a camera at all. I met Paul through a local photography club in Portland. A quiet man in his early 60s with a deep love for film, not the digital stuff everyone uses today, but real rolls of Kodak, chemical trays, darkrooms. The analog way. He lived alone in a small, cluttered house at the edge of town, surrounded by forest. When he wasn't working part-time at the library, he was in his basement, developing old rolls of forgotten film from estate sales and flea markets. His passion wasn't in taking photos, it was in uncovering them. One Thursday evening, Paul called me, something he never did. His voice was unsteady. "Something's not right with this one," he whispered. I think I made a mistake." I asked what he meant, and he told me to come over immediately. When I arrived, I found him in the basement, hunched over a table. A single red light glowed above us, casting long shadows across the dark room. Laid out before him was a strip of negatives, 5 frames in total. He pointed to the third. "I developed this yesterday. Found the film at a yard sale. Came in an old camera. Raleigh I-35. Dusty, but functional." I leaned in to examine the negative, squinting under the light. It showed a hallway, narrow, wallpapered, with a crooked picture frame hanging on one wall. Nothing strange at first glance. But then I saw it. In the far end of the hallway, barely visible, was the outline of a man. He stood too straight, too tall, with his hands by his sides. But his face wasn't right. It looked warped, blurred like someone had taken an eraser to the emulsion. No features. Just a smear of darkness where eyes, nose, and mouth should be. Double exposure? I asked. Paul shook his head. Not possible. The roll was clean. And I shot the test frames myself before this. He held up the final print. The image enlarged, clearer now, but somehow more disturbing. And he's not just in that photo. He's in all of them. Getting closer. He laid the prints out in sequence. In the first frame, the hallway was empty. In the second, the man stood at the very end, just a silhouette. In the third, he was halfway down the hall. In the fourth, he was much closer, face still unreadable but body more defined, his arms long and slightly bent, like a marionette held on invisible strings. In the fifth, he stood directly in front of the camera, his head tilted, hands reaching out. I felt a wave of nausea. The air in the darkroom seemed to thicken. "This is a trick," I said. Someone faked this. Paul's voice cracked. I thought so too, until I dreamed of the hallway last night. Same wallpaper, same frame, and I heard him, breathing, behind me. I left that night with an uneasy feeling crawling up my spine. Still, I told myself it was nothing, just an overactive imagination. But Paul stopped answering calls the next day. And the next. By Monday, I went back to his house. His front door was unlocked. The inside looked untouched. Lights off, mail piled on the table, but no sign of Paul. I called out for him. No response. Then I noticed the basement door. It was open. Not wide, but just enough. The darkroom lights were off. I descended the stairs slowly, using my phone's flashlight. The smell of developer fluid still lingered in the air. On the table was a new photo, one I hadn't seen before. It showed Paul, lying on the floor of the darkroom. A blurred figure stood over him, just slightly out of frame, arms dangling, head tilted sideways. The timestamp on the back read, 4:12 a.m. Saturday. I froze. Behind me, I heard something move. A footstep. Just one. I turned quickly, nothing. My breath hitched. My heart thudded in my ears. I took the photo and ran. Called the police, reported him missing, and handed over the photos. They didn't find Paul. Not in the basement. Not in the woods. Not anywhere. But what they did find was far worse. A trail of prints. Black, smudged shoe prints leading from the basement door to the back of the house. And one photo pinned to the wall above his developing tray. An empty hallway. Same wallpaper. Same picture frame. But this time no man. Instead, written across the print in shaky black ink were the words, "He's already developed." I didn't want to believe it. But now I understand. He isn't a ghost. He isn't a man. He's an imprint. A thing burned into film, into memory, like exposure left too long in the light. And once you've seen him, he begins to form. First in photos, then in dreams, and eventually in the corner of your eye. So if you ever find an old roll of film, untouched, forgotten, do yourself a favor. Don't develop it. Some images were never meant to be seen. Part 3. The birthday photo nobody took. There's a strange comfort in looking at old photos, birthdays, holidays, memories frozen in time. But what if, among the smiles and streamers, something else smiled back? And what if it wasn't ever supposed to be there? This is the true account of a family photo that captured more than a memory. It's not just what's in the photo that'll haunt you, but how it got there. The photo sat on the mantelpiece for years. It was a bright, cheerful shot, balloons, cake, a little girl turning 8. Everyone was there, uncles, cousins, neighbors. But what no one noticed, not at first, was the man standing at the back. The one nobody invited. This story comes from Karen Whitfield, a now-retired kindergarten teacher from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. In 1997, Karen was a single mother raising her daughter, Lily. She'd just moved into a modest house at the edge of town, tucked into a quiet neighborhood lined with sycamore trees. Life was peaceful, simple, until Lily's 8th birthday. Karen had gone all out, streamers, face paint, a clown named Chuckles, who was more creepy than funny, and her old 35mm camera to capture every moment. She took dozens of photos throughout the day. A week later, she had the roll developed at the local pharmacy and picked up the glossy prints. That's when she noticed something off. In one photo, where Lily was blowing out her candles, a man stood in the far corner of the room, dressed in black, pale, smiling just slightly. Not like someone caught mid-laugh, but like someone who was watching. Karen didn't remember him. Nobody did. She called around, asked family, neighbors, no one recognized him. Thinking maybe it was a trick of the light or some unknown guest who wandered in, she dismissed it. After all, it was a full house. Things get hectic. But then came the second photo. Lily was sitting at the table, unwrapping a Barbie doll, joy on her face. The man was behind her. Closer now. Still smiling. Still wrong. She flipped through the rest of the pack with growing dread. In each photo, the man appeared. Always standing. Always watching. and always getting closer, never interacting. No one else in the photos even glanced at him. By the final photo, one Karen swore she never took, the man was crouched beside Lily, one hand resting lightly on her shoulder. Lily was looking at the camera, frozen in an expression Karen would later describe as blank terror. No joy, no smile, just wide, paralyzed eyes. And Karen was sure of one thing: she never saw that moment happen. She never took that photo. She tore it up and threw the pieces away, disturbed beyond words. But that night, Lily started sleepwalking. The first night, Karen found her daughter standing in the hallway, facing the front door. The second, she found her in the backyard, barefoot in the cold, whispering to the air. The third night, she woke to find Lily standing at the foot of her bed. Karen asked what she was doing. Lily's reply? "I'm waiting for him to finish the photo." Those words chilled her. Karen decided to burn the photos, every last one. But the negatives were gone. She didn't remember throwing them away. She thought maybe she'd misplaced them until she opened Lily's toy chest. Inside, beneath the dolls and stuffed animals, were the negatives. Each had been carefully cut into individual frames, each held in place with sewing pins, each showing the man. But now he wasn't just standing in the background. He was in every scene, sitting at the table, holding Lily's hand, even lying on the couch next to her as she opened presents. Karen took the negatives, threw them into the fireplace, and watched them burn. But the image stayed. Literally. Because the next morning, when she passed the mirror in the hallway, something caught her eye. It was a photograph, taped to the mirror. Glossy. Perfectly centered. The man again. Only this time it was just him. No birthday. No guests. No Lily. Just him. Smiling. And a handwritten note beneath it. "Thank you for developing me." Karen moved out within the week. She and Lily lived with her sister until they could afford a new home. She never touched a film camera again. Years passed. Lily grew up, left for college, and tried to put the birthday photo behind her. But one night, in her dorm room, she called her mother, voice shaking. "Mom, he's back." Karen asked what she meant. Lily said she was going through an old yearbook someone had left in the common room, flipping through absent-mindedly. And on one of the pages was the man. Not as a student, not as staff, just there, standing in the background of a random prom photo. Same face, same smile. No one else noticed. Karen drove to her daughter that night. They tried to show the yearbook to campus security, but the photo was gone. Just a blank page now. But they both remember. And so do I. Because Karen sent me a copy of the last surviving image. She wanted me to have it, just in case. The man in the photo is burned into my mind now. I've never seen anything like it. His face that almost looks normal, but not quite. Like a mannequin that someone tried to make too human. And at night, I sometimes hear my printer humming in the dark, turning on by itself. And once, just once, it printed a photo while unplugged. It was blank at first. But the next day, something faint appeared. A shape. Standing in the background. Still forming. Photos are meant to preserve moments. But sometimes they capture something else. Something that wants to be remembered. Wants to be seen. So next time you take a photo, digital or film, ask yourself, did you invite everyone in that picture? Are you sure? Because once you see him, he sees you. And he doesn't fade. He develops. Part 4. The man in the funeral snapshot. Some photos are sacred, especially at funerals. They're meant to honor the dead, to capture a final goodbye. But what happens when a funeral photo shows someone who is never alive? This is a story of grief, a grieving family, and a camera that captured something no one was ready to see and couldn't explain. In 2012, the Reynolds family gathered in rural Oregon for the funeral of their patriarch, Earl Reynolds, a man known throughout the town of Milton for being stern but fair, a farmer, a churchgoer, and a World War II veteran. He died at the age of 87, peacefully in his sleep, or so the doctor said. The family rented a small church hall where Earl had once served as a deacon. His casket was open for viewing. Beside it stood a collage of old photos, Earl in his younger days, his wedding to Miriam, and snapshots with grandkids on his farm.
It was a somber day,
but peaceful. Nothing out of the ordinary. At least, that's what the family thought. Until the photos came back. Earl's granddaughter, Angela, had brought along a vintage Polaroid SX-70. She loved analog photography, something about the authenticity, the rawness. She took a handful of shots. The casket, the flower arrangements, the family standing together near the altar.
but one photo stood out.
It was a shot of the casket, centered perfectly in the frame. But in the background, behind the pulpit, stood a tall, narrow man in a black suit and fedora. He wasn't a family member. He wasn't clergy. And no one had seen him during the service. He looked outdated. His suit seemed at least 70 years old, the fabric too heavy, the style almost 1940s. His face was sharp, cheekbones jutting, skin pale as parchment. Most disturbing of all, he was staring directly at the camera. The photo gave Angela chills. She showed it to her mother, her uncle, her cousins. No one knew who he was. He appeared in no other pictures. None of the guests recalled seeing him. A mystery, sure, but harmless. That's what they thought. Until the dreams started. Angela woke up in a sweat 4 nights in a row, always with the same image in her mind, standing alone in the church, Earl's casket open and empty, and the man in the fedora watching from the pulpit, smiling faintly. By the 5th night, the dreams changed. Now, she wasn't just being watched, she was being followed. She tried to run through the pews, but her legs would slow like moving through water. His footsteps behind her were silent, but steady. Closer each time. Angela stopped sleeping. Out of desperation, she burned the photo. She stood in her kitchen sink and watched the flames consume it. The Polaroid curled and smoked, the image fading to black. But that night, the dream returned. And this time, the man was inside her house. In the dream, she found herself waking in her bed, hearing a soft knock at the front door. She opened it, and there he was.
Real.
Present.
Tall. He didn't speak.
He just handed her something. A Polaroid photo. It was a picture of her. Sleeping. She screamed herself awake. The next morning, she found an actual photo on her doorstep. Face down. Polaroid. The back was blank. Her hands shook as she turned it over. It was the same photo. She was sleeping in her bed. From the exact angle she dreamed. Her room was bathed in moonlight in the photo. You could see the outline of her face, her arm curled under her head. But what wasn't in the dream was what stood at the foot of her bed. The man, looking down at her. Angela left town that day. She moved in with a friend in Portland and avoided all things analog. But the story didn't stop with her. Back in Milton, other family members began seeing the man, not in dreams, but in mirrors. Angela's cousin, Craig, was shaving one morning when he noticed a figure standing behind him in the reflection. No sound, no footsteps, just a man in a black fedora in the hallway, watching. Craig spun around. No one was there. But when he turned back to the mirror, he was closer. That mirror shattered moments later when Craig punched it in panic. But the pieces of glass? They kept showing the man's reflection, even when no one was in the room. Craig started drinking. Stopped sleeping. He claimed he could hear a camera shutter every night, just after 3 a.m., always followed by a whisper. One more photo. The family tried to find a logical explanation. Was it a ghost? A hallucination? A shared trauma? Angela turned to the internet, digging into forums, local records, even legends. She found something. Back in the 1940s, a traveling mortician named Samuel Black was run out of towns across Oregon for his unorthodox practices. Rumors surrounded him, claims of photographing corpses, experimenting with embalming fluid, even tales that he spoke to the dead and demanded that families pose the departed for portraits. One article in an old microfilm archive mentioned a small-town church funeral where a strange man in a fedora had been seen photographing the dead without permission and then disappearing before anyone could confront him. The town? Milton. The church? The same one Earl's funeral had taken place in. Angela was shaken. She tracked down old images of Samuel Black from a county record book. There he was. Sharp cheekbones. Fedora. Thin smile. The same man from the Polaroid. Somehow his image had survived. And somehow he was still showing up. Years passed. The photo had long been destroyed, but the nightmares didn't stop. Angela grew older. Moved again. Tried to leave the past behind. Then one day, a package arrived on her doorstep. No return address. She opened it. Inside was an old Polaroid camera. And taped to it was a note. Time for one last picture. Smile wide. She dropped it and ran. Police searched the house. No fingerprints. No evidence. But they did find something unsettling. The attic crawl space had been disturbed. In the insulation, they found another Polaroid. Angela sleeping. Again. But this time, her eyes were open. Some people say photography steals a part of your soul. But what if it invites something in? Something that lingers. That waits. That wants to be seen. So be careful the next time someone snaps your picture, especially if you didn't see a flash. Because some snapshots don't come from this world. And some photographers never die.